Hello, all you many people out there in Facebook land. This is David Leadholt from Millbrook Playhouse, and we are back. Happy 2021. We're so excited. We're in 2021, and this is our Ghostlight Chat. For those of you that were around in the spring, we did a couple of these. We invited some of our friends from the Playhouse, did a little casual interview, and I thought I'd bring it back for the new year since we're still kind of quarantining. I thought it's a good way to reach out to our public. And today we have the one and only Kathy Arndt, who is the author of the Millbrook book, The First 50 Years, 1963 to 2013. Isn't that amazing? We have our own book. Now, before we begin, I am going to tell you, you can ask questions. You can ask us questions. There is a comment section there. Kathy is here to answer all your questions. We already have somebody there. Hello, yes, hello, Jason. How you doing? And I'm also going to do I'm going to do a little shilling for some people. First off, many, if not all, the theater community is out of work right now. So we've had some amazing, talented and creative people who have done different things to help supplement their income. And these masks are by the one and only Paige Waldron. Paige Waldron worked at Millbrook Playhouse several summers. I'm trying to do this through the thing. They're lovely. She made these. She was the wardrobe supervisor in one season and actually played the wardrobe, funny there, in Beauty and the Beast. And I'm going to show you Paige's, she's on Etsy, so you can order these on Etsy. I'm going to share that page with you so you can see. There it is. They're $15 for 3. I got at Christmas time. I'm not sure what they are now. Check her out. Support her. And I'm also shilling a little bit. Hey, we have Sue Calvert. For some of our local establishments, I have a wonderful meal over here that I started eating way before from Haywood's on the Green. So once again, restaurants are hurting as well. So if you can get out there and support your local businesses, that would be great too. I'm tricky. Let me see if I can remove from the stream. Never mind. Well, Haywood's on the Green. It's www.haywoods.otg. And they have the best buffalo chicken dip. I'm showing you right here. And we're just shilling for them because I think it's important for us in the community to support each other, to come together during these crazy times. So I wanted to share those two things. So now, without further ado, I'm going to bring you the author of the first Millbrook book, and there's going to be a second one, and I'll tell you why later, the one and only Kathy Arndt. I'm going to bring Kathy on. Kathy, are you there?
Hi, David. I am here.
Yay! How are you doing?
I am doing fine, and I am going to be supporting a local restaurant, Shanghai. I'm going to get takeout after this is over.
Yay! See, we gotta support our peeps in town. That's amazing. You have a couple people saying hi. Donna McGregor,
My old college roommate.
Sue Calvert, who is one of our ex-board members and big supporter. We love Sue. Jason Dumm, who is a local musician and actually filmed a video on our stage last year. And we have Janine, so they can ask some questions. So Kathy, before we begin to go into our in-depth talk about you and the Millbrook book, The First 50 Years, tell me, where are you at right now? Where are you located? Where are you talking?
I am in my dining room of my house here in Lock Haven.
You are in the dining room of your house in Lock Haven. Great,
yes.
Great. And so how are you surviving these crazy, quarantine times?
I love it.
Look who's here. Frank's on. Frank is on social media.
Yeah.
You've seen Frank in many, many shows. He's an incredible actor and a very good friend of yours, right, Kathy?
Yes, yes, he is.
So cool. So I'm so happy he's joining us. So you're in Lock Haven and you have been quarantining. Have you been stuck inside? What have you been doing?
I've been mostly quarantining. I have a little pod. We have Netflix night once a week. And I'm still volunteering at the HISE, the Clinton County Historical Society.
Great.
So,
what are you doing with them?
I work on the collections committee. I'm secretary for one more week. Not that I'm counting. And I've led one walking tour here, and I'm planning another one for next fall.
Oh, fun.
So been keeping busy, and I write a bit of Joanne's column that appears in the Express the first of the month.
Oh, cool.
I do from the collection.
Wow, nice. And what is it about? What does it entail?
I just pick something out of the collection that catches my interest and write a paragraph on it. And this next month it's going to be, we received some diaries that covered the years 1927 through 1962. And they were fascinating. So it was a local businessman and a former president of the the Mill Hall Bank, and his name was William Essenwein.
Wow.
And it was really cool reading it.
Cool. So you're keeping busy. You've been just, that's great. And your involvement in the community is outstanding. I mean, being involved in the Historical Society, but you're leaving them, but you'll still be around.
I'll still be on the board. I just won't be secretary.
Oh, so you don't have to worry about all the writing and all the
Joanne has inspired me.
This is, for those of you that know Joanne Hoberman, and
yes.
Who does not know Joanne Hoberman? She was on the board for 18 years, I do believe, and was the recording secretary for all those. And we miss her, but it's, after doing your good, we have good people in this community who are supporting. So that's great. So Kathy, we're going to get into a little bit. This is just, I call this the Ghost Light Chat for anybody that's new. Is
hi
because,
to my sister.
Pardon?
I said hi to my sister.
Hi to your sister. We're going to say hi. Look at Tommy Lavalley, who is an actor here. He says hello. So those of you, just a little quick history about the Ghost Light Chat. There is no Ghost Light because I'm in my office. Those of you that know the Playhouse, we have a little heat back here, and the stage isn't heated right now because we're not doing shows. So the Ghost Light is over there. I'm in my office. But I started this early COVID period. I was just like, what are we going to do? We had no idea that we were going to be stuck inside with no shows for that long. So we started this kind of casual chatting with, Millbrook celebrities, as I've now coined #Melebrities, and doing that. And so, well, lo and behold, here we are, how many months later, and we're still kind of stuck inside. So I thought I'd bring this back, and what perfect person to bring it back with is Kathy Arndt, who is the author of the Millbrook book, like I said, Millbrook, the first 50 years. And we say the first, because who knows if there'll be a second 50 years. So Kathy, we're going to get into a little bit about you. So tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up?
Grew up here in this house, actually.
In that, oh my God, that's amazing.
Same house. And went to high school here, graduated in '69.
Yeah.
Hi to my fellow class members.
Yay.
And attended Lock Haven State College at that point, Lock Haven State, and got the first BA in history from that school. Everybody else was social studies. I was the first history major.
Wow.
And then after a few months off, I went to the University of Texas in Austin and got my master's in Latin American Studies. And the really interesting thing about that school was the dorm I lived in had more students than went to Lock Haven State when I was here.
Oh my God, that's
my dorm, Jester dorm, had 3,000 students, including the developer of Dell computers.
Wow.
And I'm speaking to you on a Dell, so there's a connection.
So there you go. So it's a small world. So how was that going from like central Pennsylvania, Lock Haven, to Texas, of all places, like literally the opposite end of the country?
Yes.
How was that experience? And had you spent any other time outside of the area before that?
Oh, not living.
We
all traveled a lot. My father was a ferry pilot for Piper, so he had the travel bug, and my mother, I could say, hey, do you want to? And she'd be sitting in the car waiting to go.
Wow.
So we did a lot of traveling with the family, but that was my first time really living away from home. Although the first person I met there was from Williamsport.
Oh, really?
Well, I knocked on the door thinking it was my dorm room,
Mhm.
and it turned out it was his. And I thought, oh, this could be interesting.
That's how the little fishy Miss Kathy are. Like, not, oh, is this my dorm room? I don't know you all. I feel like.
The embarrassing thing was my father was standing beside me.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
We realized I was on the wrong floor.
You were.
So, but
so it was obviously warmer. You're obviously like dealing with weather, but what was like the living style like? What did you
living style was laid back. They did not know how to deal with snow.
Yeah.
They were getting pancake flippers to clean their windshield if it snowed or iced up. Oh. People were wonderful for the most part. I think the one real story that got to me, and there was a difference. Well, my roommate, the first time she walked in, her name was Kathy too. And her first question was, what religion are you?
Oh.
And I thought, geez, I don't even know the religions of most of my friends up here other than the Catholics. I knew the Catholics and because I was one. But I said, well, I'm Catholic. And she goes, oh, well, some of my best friends are Catholic. But she was Southern Baptist.
She was, yeah, well, kind of fitting.
But she married a Hispanic Catholic, so that was fun.
Oh my gosh! So did you spend much time past it? Were you just there for grad school, or did you spend a little extra time down there?
No, mostly grad school. I didn't have a car or anything, so I was pretty well confined to Austin. And we did do some little traveling around when we had time. And so
that's cool. That's cool. And then you came back to Central PA from there.
I came back to Central PA. Degree in Latin American Studies was fun. I really enjoyed it, but my Spanish is not that good. I can understand it.
Yeah.
Some Spanish. I had one professor I didn't understand a word he said. And I asked the Cuban guy sitting next to me, and he goes, I don't understand him either. He was Chilean.
Oh my God.
And but I just decided that I wanted to come back here, see if I could find a job.
And so what did you do from there when you came back?
I worked at Piper for 3 years. And at the end of like my last year there, I was writing the magazine that was distributed around the world to the distributors.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And then I spent a wonderful year on unemployment. And my college loan payment was $64 a month.
Oh my! I wonder if anybody out there, any parents or college kids watching, like, can you imagine $64? That's
so
cool.
I had a very nice year on unemployment. Went to the Y every morning, did my swimming, and then my last unemployment check arrived the week before I started to work for unemployment.
Wow.
So I got into the state employment system, was there for about 2.5 years, and then I went to Department of Environmental Resources, then Protection now, and I was there for 25 years, running their file room.
Hey,
so
wow. That's amazing. And again, we have a lot of people. You have a lot of friends out here saying hi, Kathy. Feel free to ask Kathy a question about herself. We're going to dive into the book in Millbrook a little bit. I wanted y'all to kind of, like I said, this is a casual deep dive into people's lives, the exciting people around Millbrook. So tell me a little bit, so I've been in Mill Hall, Lock Haven area now. This is my 7th season at Millbrook. I grew up in Michigan. So the one thing that is when I grew up in Michigan, I lived in New York for 20 years. And then I was kind of Jersey in here. And everybody from Michigan points at their hand. And I found out finally Pennsylvanians actually point at their hand too, show their map. They're like, I live here. So I grew up here, moved to New York, and now I'm here. So the difference, I've noticed in the 7 years I've been here, changing differences in the downtown and then Lock Haven. Tell me, what's the biggest difference you notice from growing up to now? How has the tone of the city changed? What is it
My house is not flooding every few years since they built the dike levee, so that was very good.
And so you dealt with that like big time.
Oh, yeah.
You're about 4 or 5 blocks from the river, right?
2.
Oh, you're only 2 blocks? It feels like.
Well, actually 1 block from the river.
From the river.
I'm on Main Street. And imagine this room I'm in flooded to over the ceiling.
Wow.
Up the stairs. It reached within a few inches of the 2nd floor.
So the levee was a good thing for you and your family.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. And we know, interesting historical fact, that Joanne Hoberman's husband was highly involved in getting the levee put in.
Yes.
She tells me there was a lot of controversy in and around the levee being put in. It was like a drama. I told her she has to write the play, like the Joanne Hoberman story, how we built the levee.
She was also my professor in science at the college too.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So besides the flooding, what have you noticed? Kind of.
Well, the downtown is a lot different. There used to be a lot of stores, a lot of women's dress shops, and things like that. But the feeling of the downtown is still good. You can walk uptown and see people you know. And now when you stop in the stores, like the bus stops here, I've known Paula because she lived next door to me here all my life. So it's neat to walk uptown and actually see people you know.
Yeah. Well, you are literally like a couple blocks or a block or whatever you want to consider it from the movie theater. So you're right downtown. So if you grew up there, you were.
Saturday afternoon was spent at either the Garden or the Roxy.
Oh, that's amazing. So you have, so somebody asked about your world travelers. You like to travel a lot. Where's your favorite place you've traveled to?
I think, well, I love Ireland and Great Britain. We have friends in Great Britain that Fran Decker and I visited just last year, now a year and a half ago. And I've been to Russia. That was definitely one of the most interesting ones. We did a river cruise from St. Petersburg to Moscow.
Wow.
And that was good. Donna and I went to Portugal. Yes. Yeah. And been to Spain. Went to Spain the month after the towers were hit by the planes. And my friends at work said, "You're not going, are you?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I paid for it. I'm going."
So you love to travel. So just central PA, it feels like home. What does it draw you back there? Why did you never want to go to a European country or live?
I love visiting other places, but I just love it here. There's a lot of stuff to do during the summer with the Playhouse and the concerts, and you're like half hour from Williamsport or State College, so you have the professional traveling theater come through. There's concerts everywhere. Oh, and I was to Colorado last year. My sister reminded me.
They're all reminding you. Your whole family's on here. Be like, don't forget about us. Well, this is a nice transition. Well, first I want to say what I've noticed in the downtown and what's happening again, which I think is a really good sign about smaller town America, is that there's during this whole pandemic, there's 4 shops that opened up. Matsu, I know I made that wrong, a women's clothing store.
And she's actually performed at Millbrook as a child.
Did she really? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. There's the Skeleton Key, is it? And then there's a new men's clothing store that opened up. There's a couple other places that have just opened up. So I feel like the kind of small town America, because people have been stuck at home, is going to flourish, which I think is great. Cool. So so you say the Playhouse. So we're going to transition and talk a little bit about your life at Millbrook Playhouse. Need a little theme song. I feel like I should have underscoring. Kathy Arndt, this is your life. So what was your first experience at Millbrook Playhouse? Who took you there? Explain that.
I think my parents took me there in the first season because I sort of remember seeing Inherit the Wind.
Oh my God.
And that was the first season.
Which was what year, Kathy?
1963.
1963. So you've been coming to the Playhouse except for this year.
Not often during the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
But in the, say, mid 80s. Now, my mom and I would go occasionally.
Yeah.
But mid 80s, I started going regularly. And I've been a season ticket holder for a lot of years.
For a lot of years. So your family would just kind of casually go once in a while.
My mother and I, yeah.
You pardon?
My mother and I.
Your mother and you. We still got to get those men back in the theater more. Like it's that's the big thing. Women usually buy the theater tickets statistically, so we always got to get the men to come in. So those early years, what do you remember about them? What was the Playhouse like? What was the experience like?
Well, by the time I was there, the cabaret was in, and the upstairs. And
even before like your first few, like those early years, what do you specifically remember out of those early?
Just the play.
Yeah.
The 70s, and I'm sure I was there a few times during the 70s.
Yeah.
They did have, back in the late 60s, early 70s, there was an occasional rodent problem on the upper floor, and you would, on the main stage, and you would hear somebody say, "Feet up," and everybody put their feet up while a mouse ran underneath your feet. And that's why Mom didn't go too often, because she hated mice.
She hated. What was it like around here? Like I pulled up some pictures, but what did it look like? I mean, that's what I can't get my brain on. There was no Walmart, like, there was Bellefonte Avenue into the town. Was it just a lot of like land around here? What was it physically like? Do you remember?
No.
No,
I was a first ward child, and Fran Decker tells me that I know London better than I know the Hill District, and she's right.
So here's a picture of
clearing out the barn for the first time.
Yeah, that's them clearing out the barn.
The hay was on the main floor, and the cattle were mostly on the ground floor originally.
And who are these people? Tell me, do you know?
No, I think one of them was one of my dad's bosses.
Oh, that's interesting.
And but I don't really. I mean, their names are on there. Some of the names are fairly.
There we go.
Flanagan, I think, might have been my dad's boss. And Samuel Wood, I'm familiar with the name. I think he was on the board for a while.
Cool.
So, yep, that was after Peter Bestalder and Dan Reinhold came up with the idea.
So fast forward. So the 60s and the 70s, you kind of came a little bit with your family. So in the 80s, you came in. What is the first? So you remember Inherit the Wind. What is the first thing, kind of as a younger adult, do you remember? What was your first visceral experience from it?
I just remember liking the plays, but I don't remember the plays themselves. Usually if I see a play, then it's like gone.
Yeah.
Until I became an usher. 2004, I became an usher. My interview with Earl May was, I said, "Hey, I'd like to be an usher." And she says, "Well, we wear black pants and white tops." And I said, "I don't wear white." And she's like, "Okay." So I just wore light colored top. But then I got to see more of the shows more often. And I got to know the actors. So it became much more personal for me then. Yeah.
And so you kind of, your introduction was just being an usher. And what inspired you to be an usher? You just wanted cheap tickets? You just wanted to have something to do?
No, I already had season tickets.
Oh, okay.
I bought the season ticket to support the theater.
Yeah.
But my parents had died in the late 90s. My aunt, who lived on the other side of my house, I was still helping take the small care that she needed, but she died in 2004. So then when I came home from work, I didn't have to go, look in on her and stuff. So I just decided I like Millbrook. I have free time at night. So usher.
You ushered.
Yep.
So what do you remember about those kind of ushering days? Because you do get to see a little bit behind the scenes, especially in the Playhouse, because if the people that don't know, the actors get dressed kind of in the far side of, like, closer to the Haywood side, as we call it. And the stage is the middle of the area, and then the bathrooms are on the other side. So a lot of times the actors are like walking by 5 minutes before the show so they can go to the bathroom. So, you know.
And the warm-ups and the sound checks.
So you saw that. So what specifically remember, and did you see any good fights? Like, did you get any good, like, were you there for any knock? Because listen, we all know theater people can be very dramatic, and there's been some uproars before a show. Was there any good dish you remember?
Have been seen a few, heard a few. It was like, okay, what was that one about? And you notice sometimes where some of the actors kind of avoided each other. So you're like, okay, something's up there.
Yeah.
And, but you do get to know a lot of the actors better. Now I'm just back to ushering again. I'm not on the board, and I'm not like the chief usher anymore. So now there were some years I was there, especially when Erla May was helping out with her parents. I was there almost every night. And I know during the one play about Frank Sinatra, you know, when I was waking up in the morning thinking "Fly Me to the Moon," it was like, okay, I've seen that show.
So who was, sorry, go ahead. So who was like, so then you got those little backstage and behind the scenes, like who was the first actor you kind of remember like engaging in, talking to?
Guido.
Guido? Oh my God.
Guido was in my living room once when I came home from New York weekend. Once a year, we would take a Dave Liddick and Carol Liddick trip to New York for the weekend, leave on a Friday, come back on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And I came back to my house and my screen door was locked and it was open. The door was open. So I'm like, well, I'm going to have to knock on my own door. So I knocked. And I think Brady Carnahan opened the door. And I'm like, hi, who are you? And Teresa Pond was renting my apartment next door. The Millbrook was renting my apartment. Yeah. Teresa and Guido and Guido was there until housing opened up. So Guido and Teresa were in my living room. So, and two of them were sitting on the floor, and I'm like, why are you sitting on the floor? And he goes, well, don't you know it's on your couch? I'm like, no. So they pulled off this blanket, and there was a rifle on my couch, which my brother had left there because he thought I wasn't coming back till Monday.
So,
I'm like, oh, okay.
So this is their first introduction. Like, welcome to where you're staying, and here's a rifle.
Yes. But Guido, Mark de la Concha, and some of the younger ones like Johnny Hausner, I would see a lot.
Yeah.
On stage, and Aaron, of course.
Yeah.
And Frank, finally, after a year, got him to talk to me.
I know. Well, that's hard. Frank is a quiet one.
Yes, he is, but he's absolutely wonderful. And
in some Frank's shows, I know for me, he played the father Atticus Fitch in To Kill a Mockingbird when I was here, and he was Holmes in Baskerville and the farce comedy of Tenors. He was in that. He's a very funny. And last season we had was Gaslight. So he's done a couple shows, and we probably had about 4 or 5 sentences to each other. But he's a good guy. You know, he does his job, shows up, he's good. Yep. Memorizes his lines.
Should sit on the porch with him at night.
Oh, I'm sure. Everybody's like that. Sometimes the quiet ones is what you got to worry about. So you've become very close to him. He's also like got to be very close. So that's the great thing about kind of the
Joanne and I shared him over the years.
Joanne has retired the inn, she said. She retired from the board. She retired the inn. She's no longer taking in. I stayed with Joanne. So kind of quick side story. So how I basically got this position was because of Joanne. I worked here in 2004 and directed Smoke on the Mountain, and Steve Sunderland was the artistic director, and I stayed in the dorms, the old dorms, which were like the basement, and I was a little like staying with the actors and whatever. I was a diva, But I came back in 2007 to do Black Patent Leather Shoes. And I said, Steve, can I don't really want to stay in the dorms, it's, whatever. So he put me with Joanne, and Joanne and I got to be good friends. And then when the position opened up, she contacted me. So that's a great thing about a lot of times. We don't do it as much and the community. So if anybody out there watching ever wants to host an actor or an artist, let us know. We always need housing.
Yep. But I also became close with Suzanne Perry, who's now in New York, and Rory Lance Swartz. And every time we went in New York for the weekend, we would meet up with the three of them at separate dinners and stuff, or brunch at Langan's. And so that was good.
Rose, just so you know, Roseanne Yanarella is like talking about she can't dance. So there's a whole conversation going on.
Besides us,
you're not paying attention to us, Roseanne. And Craig, we can bring you on, and Roseanne, you can tell us about your broken foot. But maybe we'll get Roseanne on one of these days to tell her stories.
She's been at the theater longer than I have. Are my old classmates again? Okay.
So going back to those kind of Brady and them. Brady was here my first year. So you kind of from the 80s to the 2000s buzzed by. So what are some of your fondest memories, favorite shows, and maybe one or two of your least favorite shows? We got to get. That's okay, Roseanne. We forgive you.
Favorite shows. Actually, I wrote down a few because I can. Unfortunately, not on this sheet.
Off the top of your head.
Well, I think actually two of yours were among my favorites.
Oh, good. That's a long history. That's high praise.
The To Kill a Mockingbird and Fun Home.
Yeah.
Well, I had read the book years before I saw the play, and I thought it was very well done. The Syringa Tree.
Yeah.
Was definitely one of my favorites. Not very popular.
No.
There were like 10 to 19 people in the cabaret, but it really moved me, and I thought the actress, whose name I cannot remember, was absolutely wonderful, played 23 roles, I think. And Pageant. I enjoyed Pageant.
Pageant was the summer I was here for Patent Leather, and they were rehearsing that. I was gone. So when you're a director at Millbrook, you kind of come in and out. It's like 10 days you're in and out. The actors are at least like here for one or two shows. Yeah, like 3 weeks kind of on average, 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So the directors come and go, so it's quick. But I remember Mark, because that was the first show. I always joke with Mark, because Steve Sunderland was trying to get me to hire Mark, and I didn't really want to hire him. I was like, who's this guy? What are you doing? And like, Mark actually called me last night. We still talk all the time. He's down at
we're Facebook friends.
Yeah. Oh shoot, I was going to ask you. So Syringa Tree, which is, it's interesting. Some of these shows that are sometimes not the most, like laugh righty kind of shows do stand out. We always try to. I know Steve and Mary Kate. I didn't know Teresa. All kind of like we eke one in. Like
one show in that wasn't well known.
Yeah.
Sometimes it didn't.
Yes. Listen, I still say this. I did Guys and Dolls my second year, and it barely sold. I did Little Shop of Horrors. It barely sold. And then like Church Basement Ladies, nobody ever heard of. Kitchen Witches, they sold out. So you kind of don't know. It's an interesting audience. It's always like a challenge to figure out what's going to click.
I know one of your questions that you kind of slipped me.
Yes.
Was what was your favorite decade?
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, I didn't see it, but I think probably my favorite decade would have been the 1960s, because they did a lot of serious drama. The Tennessee Williams, Glass Menagerie. One of the most popular shows in the 1960s that sold was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And to me, that was amazing, because you couldn't do a series of serious dramas now.
And it's interesting, you know all those seasons because you wrote the book, and we'll talk a little bit about the book in a minute. But when I first got here, there was not a lot of the like history around, and I found, and I love the old playbills, and I love digging through all these old archives. And we started hanging up all the old show posters, and you look at those seasons, and they did Sondheim, they did Williams, they did, classic plays.
Right.
But it was like, it's interesting that we as a society, and not to slam us as a society, but we've kind of dumbed it down a little bit because, sometimes people don't want, and I get it. Like, it's summer and you're dealing with so much reality in today's day and age to before maybe, you didn't deal with it in the same way. But I often wondered, like, I would love to take one of those seasons and see how it would do now. Like, I would love to do Company. I would love to do, Little Night Music, which I think would be beautiful in this space. I really, really, really want to do Streetcar Named Desire so bad in this space, just because I think it would work. Some of those big classic dramas our stage is great for, like a little intimate play. It's hard, and sometimes something that's too intense in the cabaret, if it's so intense, you're so close, it's almost off-putting.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, also with Streetcar Named Desire, while I was researching the book, I found out that Stanley and Stella got married after this. Oh, yes.
We'll have to go through at the end, like all the couples we know that got married because of Millbrook, and why am I still single? That's all I want to know out there. So great. So we kind of talked about the play. So tell me about, when did you join the board? You were on the board for how many years?
6 years, 8 through 2013, I think.
13.
Yep.
And so because of your history background, did you become like involved in the historical part of it? Like, how did you get to be this like archivalist?
They asked me to write a pamphlet about the first 50 years. And I'm like, once I started looking at it, I said, this isn't going to be a pamphlet.
Yeah.
It kept getting bigger. And I think now it's like 165 pages.
Wow.
And, but did the research, because for my history degrees, I have research background.
Yeah.
And so I just started at the beginning.
And it wasn't going to be a book. It was just going to
be sort of a pamphlet. And then I told them after a couple of years, I said, this is going to be bigger. And I actually finished the first draft in like 2014, but I wasn't really happy with it. So I said, let's put it off for a year. And I added more. And then 2017, I think I turned the booklet over, but I am not a computer genius at all. I had no way of putting in the pictures. I had a lot of photos that I had chosen. Yeah. So it got turned over to Bill Crowell, who did a marvelous job. And, if I had had that job, it would have been, okay, we'll just put the pictures at the end of each chapter. But he actually read the book and placed the pictures right where they belonged and made it a much better book.
Yeah.
And,
what surprised you about when you started writing and researching? What were some of the biggest, oh my God, I didn't know that, or the kind of most monumental moments?
I think the man's name is Beinhardt, but I'm not sure. He wrote Wag the Dog about the Clinton here as a stage manager, I think. Of course, the famous actors that were here. In our first season, one of the interns was Michael Tucker, who became a regular in LA Law.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's still acting, or at least he was at the Cape May Playhouse after Suzanne Perry was at the Cape May Playhouse a few years ago. So we did not see him, but his name was on the...
I'm trying to see. I have some photos of it. And what else did you find that was surprising?
Well, just actually the whole first season was surprising to me because there were 15 members in the cast and crew.
Yeah.
Like 7 actors, and they did They had 9 weeks of theater. And yeah, that was probably late 60s.
Late 60s. So that was.
And they had, I think, 7 actors, and the rest was crew. They did 8 plays over 9 weeks. So every week, the actors would be performing one play, rehearsing another play, and learning the lines of the third play.
Yeah.
Luckily, most of them were from the same school. Their professor was the first artistic director, Tom. His name was on Tom Long.
Hello.
And he was from the Virginia Professional Institute, which is now Virginia Commonwealth University. And many of the actors were from the same school. So they knew all the shortcuts.
So I'm just showing some old photos. Those of you that are out there watching, this is
actually the guy on the left side of your screen in the front row.
This one
is Tim Croak. Had a wonderful voice. He was a classmate of mine in elementary school. Went to Europe. Was an opera singer there. Unfortunately, he died a few years ago. But yeah, these shows were great shows.
What else? What else stands out in terms of, or what other surprises writing did you come up with?
Oh, well, when they were going to open the cabaret, the snack bar was actually in the back part of the cabaret. So whenever the main stage broke, they had to stop the play.
Oh.
The guy who's has a hand on his shoulder is Kyle MacLachlan, who is now a very well-known actor. Noah Emmerich was here, who was in The Americans. Yep. The hat is in front of Kyle there.
Yeah.
And
he was on The Americans?
Yeah, he was on The Americans as the FBI. This is Noah Emmerich, not Kyle.
Yeah.
And I think, they also designed the cabaret. They said candlelit. And I thought, don't think a lot of candles in an old barn is good. So when it opened, there was no candle. Candles were gone.
Yeah.
The types of fundraisers were interesting. They had of course, the royalty dinner.
Yeah.
But they also had King Henry's feast, which was a lot of fun. And the cruises now and the trips. And in a 5-year period, they raised $100,000 to buy the barn and put in, I think, the first air conditioning.
Wow. What year was that? Do you know?
The early 90s.
The early 90s. So y'all watch, and there used to be a time when people complained that there was, it was always amazing when you look at those early photos, people dressed up, people got on suits and ties. You did not go out the way we go out now. We're much more casual in society. And
well, the Friday night show didn't even start until 8:30.
Oh, really?
Because, Friday night was shopping night in Lock Haven. Everybody went uptown and shopped.
That's amazing.
So they would start the shows at 8:30.
Wow, that's so cool. That's amazing. I love that. Out there, anybody that's watching, throw in your favorite show, keep asking questions. I love finding out what people like, remember, if you've seen some. Roseanne, I know Brigadoon. Keep yelling at me, do Brigadoon again. So talk to me, the writing process of it. So it was more of a research situation, not
research for the first few years. Spent a lot of time at the library looking at microfiche, one of my favorite things to do.
Oh.
But at least this time they were all in English, because when I did it in grad school, they were in Spanish and Portuguese as well as English. And they talking to people, kind of blind, emailing some people. I talked to Flavia Portensa, who was in with Laura Parker, who went to Dark Shadows then. Oh. We actually have 3 people that became members of the Dark Shadow cast.
Wow, that's...
Then the person whose name I can't remember offhand, who is the person who sends out traveling shows from Columbia artists in New York, is actually here.
So did you reach out to these people when you were researching it? Did you?
Yeah, I just kind of found few I was able to find. I thought, how many Flavia Portenses can there be in the United States? and so I just kind of blind emailed her, and it was her.
Were people responsive? How did people
most of the people did respond. Michael Tucker did not, so he's yeah, a lot of the people, I didn't call out to that many.
Yeah.
But I did to the person who wrote Wag the Dog.
Yeah.
Larry Beinhardt, I think is his name. And he answered. I thought maybe it was his father that was a stage manager, but he goes, "Oh, I don't know why you thought it was my father. It's me."
Yeah.
My old boss. Hi, boss.
Because I would love, our 60th anniversary is coming up in a couple of years, and I want to, I want it to be a hootenanny. I would love to reach out to a lot of these, all alums. Like when I don't know what year it was, but a group of people came by. They were wandering around, and they had all spent their younger days here at the barn. There was like about 5 or 6 of them. They all met here. They kept in touch all these years, and they came up to like look around and see the place. Yeah. And I think I'm not a history person. I'm not really an academic person.
Let me bring one more thing in. Yeah. My research, Fran Decker and I went to Richmond, Virginia, and met up with 3 of the 7 actors who had been here in the very first season, had dinner with them. It was a wonderful evening. I heard a lot about early stories. Sam put up stovepipe lights for the theater. The night that they were supposed to open, and the day they still didn't have all the seats in the theater, so they called in board members and actors unloading seats from a truck.
Oh my God.
They did not have a sound system, and prior to like a few days before it was supposed to open, because they wouldn't buy anything they couldn't pay for.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting business model. That doesn't always happen in the theater.
Yep. Bill Piper and his wife Margot got in a plane, flew up to Connecticut, got the sound system, brought it back, and put it in. Or, Sam put it in. And so that was a wonderful research opportunity and a wonderful chance to meet great people.
Yeah.
And so it was Woody, Sam, and Woody, Sam, and Marshall. And
this is Helen Bechtel.
Yes.
Who was here in, what was it, 80? What would have been?
I think late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. And those of you that don't know, Alison Bechtel, Fun Home, the musical Fun Home is based on the life here. And that's her mother and her father were involved at the Playhouse.
Yeah, father.
He was on the board, and she was an actress in several of the productions.
Yep.
And it's, kind of a controversy because the way she interpreted their story here. It was really what the kids call meta, doing a musical, doing a play about a show that takes place in the town you're in. And we actually rented the house. One of the actors rented the house that they grew up in and rehearsed the opening scenes of the show in the house.
Yes.
And then Allison herself came out to see the show and everything. There you go.
That was amazing.
And her daughter, Aaron's daughter, was young Allison. It's crazy for me. I was trying to do the math. That was 2017. So that was almost 5 years ago. So it's kind of an unwritten thing that you don't do a show too many years after it was once produced. So when I started, Teresa had done all the big in 1 year. She did Grease, Sound of Music, Nonsense, like Patsy Cline, all in 1 year. And I was like, oh my God, those are all the big shows you do to get an audience. So like, we got to wait 10 years. It's almost like, 1 year I'm like, let's just do a best of. Let's do every favorite show that ever happened in 1 year. Anyway, I said I got to go off track. Cruise of members. I think I think it would be an amazing idea.
Yep.
Got to get a committee to get us those people. Because there's a lot of couples. So in my 7 years, there has been 2 marriages of couples that met here. I'm trying to think. Our sound designer and cabaret stage manager, Sam and Corey.
Sam is my great niece.
Oh, that's right. Yes. They met here and they got married. Ethan Vale and Alicia Tyler Lohr met. They kind of met here at Lock Haven, but they worked here. They're married. There's a lot of couples. James Chella and Matt Farrelly are in New York. They're still together. They met here. Oh my God. There's several others, and they're gonna I'll remember them all. But there's so many people that have just, and when we did Guys and Dolls, that couple that played Sky and Sarah ended up getting married. And I remember because we tried to reach out to them during that time, and they got married. So, it happens.
Yeah, I think there were about 6 couples that I could track down.
Cool. So, I mean, they call them showmances. We jaded old timers are like, oh, let's see if this works, last. But I'm still amazed. So even in my first year, like there was a group that Rob Schneider, who's now directed for me several times. Rob did Rock of Ages, Leading Ladies, I Love You Perfect when we did it. He's done a lot of the variety hours and fundraisers. He kind of really connected with that group they did Leading Ladies with, and they are super, like that whole New York contingency is super close. And I remember Mary Kate Burke saying, when she was Here, that this was a lot of her artist community that she found in New York. So I kind of skipped over this one, but why do you think like Millbrook is important to this community? And as a world traveler, why do you think it's important to all communities to have these kind of theaters? In your humble opinion, as a, if you were a politician,
I think Millbrook is good to bring in theater.
Yeah.
I think theater is an essential part of life, and it introduces people to maybe concepts that they hadn't thought about before. And music is always good.
Yeah. Heals the soul, as they say.
Yes. I think the actors bring in their own diversity to this area, which is good. But I think the community also contributes a lot financially, definitely.
Yeah.
And just their support. I mean, there have been people that have been coming to the theater, probably some since the 60s.
Yeah. Joe Walsh's and his wife, her father and mother have been, they would come. We did the senior previews. We no longer do the senior previews. We did the senior discounts, but they've been coming. They said they were here every year. I see them, and they've been coming since the first year.
Yep.
Said we were here in a circle setting up chairs, and there was hay and animals running around. We're like, let's turn it into a theater. And I always say, and I get on, if anybody ever watches these, I do get on a bit of my soapbox, but kind of being an outsider who's now been here long enough to be an insider, you just don't see it anywhere, let alone like a small rural town in anywhere, kind of an isolated population. We are close, like you said, we're close to Williamsport and State College, but to have 58 years, even though we didn't really have 57, that's not our fault. But.
Yeah. And the number of families that have gotten involved. I mean, there was the Akelys.
Yes, there's a picture.
And the Montarzis and Uda and John Rich and the Hogermans and all those. And of course, the part that Earl May has played in the theater for the years that I've been there.
Yes. And, and interesting enough, like yourself, like she was a math teacher. I think she grew up, on a farm. Like, I think it's interesting, to have that kind of diversity. And that's why I always try to explain to people, I'm like, Lock Haven doesn't always seem like your small mountain town. It's like, because of the university, we have our own newspaper. It has this kind of cool downtown. I think all small town America has suffered through the years, just because of things. Tell me a little bit. So I lost my train of thought. So have you written any other things, and do you have any inkling to write anything else?
If I wrote anything else, it would just have to be something like this, where I do the research and I do the writing. Something historic.
You would never want to write like a novel or a short story or anything like that?
Reading other people's. I'm reading 2 short story collections right now.
Oh, really? What are they?
One's about Irish short stories, and I've been to Ireland like 5 times. So that's always interesting. And then I'm also reading Truman Capote's Music for Chameleons that a friend, Barb, loaned me. And that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so I just like reading different genres, and that's like seeing plays. I like I like to be surprised sometimes to see that a play I never heard of. It's just like, great.
So you talked about Serengatry. What else do you have any other recollections? What other surprises?
I think Teresa put on called Fat Pig.
Yeah.
Which I found really interesting. I had no idea what it was going in. And
talk about a hard sell.
Yeah, it was. It did better than Serengatry, though.
Yeah. I remember Stephen telling me he had to explain to some people what apartheid was.
Oh, yeah.
I
had people who I thought would know better say, well, I didn't understand the background of the play. And I'm like, what world have you been living in for the last, 60 years?
Again, and I'm kind of like, I like a musical theater. I love I kind of like dark musicals, quite frankly. Like, that's more my ilk. But I love variety, and that's actually what I like the most about that. I try to do here is find a little bit of everything, because if somebody complains, I'm like, oh, that was too provocative. It's like, well, I'm giving you like Mamma Mia, like the most you're
not going to please everybody.
Somebody wrote in the survey about reopening, stop doing political shows, and I was like,
what political shows?
I'm like, Newsies? I guess Newsies is kind of political, like tap dancing boys with newspapers. I don't want to see that on like $1 Million Quartet, like Gaslight. I mean, I thought Gaslight would be a little bit, actually was, worried, and people loved Gaslight. Yeah. It was, I love that movie. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I thought they did a good job with a kind of a very, modern audience takes things differently. I always say that, coming to the theater now is different than in the 60s. We're like, everything's got to be faster. So and I always say producing the shows are harder and harder. Like the Disney shows, like Little Mermaid and Mary Poppins, those Broadway shows are millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we got to do them, and we got like $10 a roll of gaff tape in 3 hours. Go,
I saw one of the surveys that said, "Oh, you should do Lion King," and I'm like, "What?"
Well, and luckily enough, I've gotten some good directors like Courtney Lane Self, who did Fun Home. Did a lot of the Disney stuff. Mostly because, and Shannon Agnew, who is, another smart, they understand, the tricks in the trade. Because I'm always like, listen, I remember Courtney and I've probably told the story before, but like teching Little Mermaid, which is, crazy. It's like an animated show that they put on stage on Broadway. And when it was on Broadway, it didn't do very well. Like the audience, like it didn't get great reviews. It didn't run as long as some of the other ones. I'm like, because how do you do it? So we were stressing about something, and I'm like, listen, Broadway had $13 million, and like,
with what you have,
just go to black, like blackout, let the audience use their imagination, which kind of doesn't happen as much.
That was one of I think the first show that I actually brought my great niece to She was, I think, like 6 at the time,
Yeah.
and she loved it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and they're harder and harder, and we keep trying to keep up, so we luckily got a new sound system a couple of years ago from the Sons of Italy. Thank Sons of Italy if you're out there. We got some sound equipment and stuff, but like there are major, things I'd love to do, if I could have, should have, would have,
I would love to see a hearing loop installed.
Yeah. And we've tried for grants out there, 88 grants and all that stuff. But yes, I hope some days there's no flooding, so we're gonna like figure it out. Like, listen, any millionaires out there, I have a great proposal. I think we could keep the barn, but maybe move uphill somewhere, out of a flood zone. Everybody's like, what, and give up the barn? And I'm like, maybe.
Nah, they did a study on that. That was one of the things I looked at, and I'm like, don't move out of the barn.
Well, at some point you got to figure out, like, how long is it going to still stay standing? I always tell everybody, great, spend 7 years here. Like, listen, we have heat. Like, we didn't have heat. No, it's not insulated. My office, I have a little space heater down here, but in my years, we put in the prop costume area, which the audiences don't see, was not heated or air conditioned, and now it's air conditioned. So we're getting fancy slowly but surely. The beams going out are a big pipe dream. I keep thinking if we found an artist who did woodwork and like we slice the beam, figured out like how thick you need, like design the artwork and sold them ahead of time as a fundraiser, I bet you I would spend a good amount of money to get a piece of that beam. I know Roseanne would do the same. Like, we've all like, the kids have named it, like the beam now has a name, it has an Instagram account, Candace Nicole. It's kind of crazy, but
even if you could like cut out a center section and put glass,
like a little
through it.
And it's actually for the directors, it's always the one up on the stage that is hard for us, but the audience is the one in the audience. But anyway, I digress a little bit. So if you had to call the next phase of the book, what would you name it? Like, so 50 and beyond. What would you call the 50 and beyond?
The David years.
We practiced that one. So just so you're all listening out there, so the book is the first 50 years. Guess which year I started? After the 51. So this big book doesn't have.
Well, you did sneak your picture in. I just noticed that.
You did? Did you squeeze it in? It's like, and this guy David, like we can't get rid of him now. Like
you were mentioned as for your directorial parts, but then I saw on the directors of Millbrook the first 50 years. There's like 2014 to present.
David, that guy, we can't get rid of him. He keeps coming back. I don't know. Like we're gonna have to do the 60 years to get him out of here. Anybody out there watching have a last question? Anything, Kathy? Anything for our wonderful audience? We're getting to be about an hour, and I wanted to keep it under an hour. But it's been lovely chatting. I love hearing these stories. I love the history. We're going to get more of this stuff. Get the book. Oh, so you can order the book if you go to our website. It is right there. So you can go online and you can order it, and David Gritzner, our business manager, will mail it to you, or we can make arrangements if you're local to drop it off somewhere, or you can squeeze by and pick it up at the barn, and I can be here to get it to you. But it's wonderful. It is a great collector's item.
And actually, the drawing on it, the etching, was done by a professor from the college who was active on the board, Professor James Hamilton. And his son gave me permission. He has since died, but his son gave me permission to use it.
Yeah.
And I think that represents the barn during those years.
Absolutely. And I love this picture of the Millbrook farm.
Yes.
And the cows. We still get a lot of animals. I keep saying I get a lot of animals here. I almost ran in with a bear. I had to run in with a bear during the fall, but in the shop. But anyway, and I want to keep telling everybody out there to please keep supporting Millbrook. I know we just did a big kind of year-end fundraiser, Come Back Stronger, and it was a very successful fundraiser. We raised over $14,000, which is amazing for us. We've never raised that kind of money, so we thank you. There are still things like buying the book. We are going to be offering some winter classes, some virtual, maybe some in person for the kids. So Shannon Agnew is going to be teaching an adult acting class online. Nick Carroll, who's in town because of his job got canceled, is going to be teaching some classes for our junior aged kids. And we're hoping to do a couple other teen classes. And we're still selling. So we're giving these away as part of our donation before, but we're still selling them. We're going to sell them online. I got to find the camera. It's reading backwards. There's no place like Millbrook, I help. So we're going to be selling these as part of a fundraiser. You can buy the book. You can go on a website. You can also buy some merch. All that stuff helps us keep going. We're not selling tickets. So anything you can do to support the arts, like Kathy said, it's so important for us to be here. It's so important for the community. All these amazing people that she's discussed are here, and this is such an amazing community to support Millbrook and people like Kathy who are, for people in my position, we reach out to Kathy all the time for housing, for anything, like, Kathy, I need your help, and they all come a-calling. So
the volunteers are just amazing.
Yes.
For the theater, that it's helped keep it going.
Yes. Absolutely. And I want to thank you, Kathy, for writing the book. We finally got it out. We pushed it. We got it. It took us a little while and some time, but time for COVID, so everybody has time to read it.
Yep.
And any parting words, anything you want to say on your way?
Nope. I mean, I've had not a long career with Millbrook, but I mean, it was just amazing to watch the kids grow up.
Yes.
Like Aaron and Nick and Johnny and all of those, just to see people grow and to see the actors come in and out, and some who have remained part of Millbrook for years.
I know. I love it. That's why, like, we obviously people like Frank back, and we do miss the Guido, but Guido, people like Guido.
Still floating around, I'm sure.
Yes. Oh, yes. I hear it. I'm born alone a lot, and I'm like, Guido.
And he still owes me rent money.
Maybe. And people like Martina Rogers, who was one of our big,
yes.
They're here, they're watching. So we have our angels, and we have our angels in the sky, and we have our angels on earth, like Kathy Arndt. And we appreciate you so much, Kathy. And thank you all for tuning in. This is great. So we're going to be doing a couple of these. I'm trying to kind of generate more of this kind of in-depth fun, sit around, have some food, have some drink, chat, get a little in-depth with some of our amazing Millbrook celebrities, as we like to say. And please send us an email. Tell us what you like, what you want to see. I'm always interested to hear what people want to see more of or less of. Less of you, Guy. And thank you, Kathy. I appreciate it. Thank you,
David. Thank you.
Check our website and our social media for all our updates. Thank you. I'm going to end. Goodbye, all.